Today on River Road Garage, we'll be working on 2000 S10, replacing the radiator. Alright, now to get started on this, we're going to go ahead and remove the three 10mm bolts right here in the front. And we're going to go ahead and set those off to the side so we don't lose them. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the AC hoses from this front clip, which you should be able to just grab a hold of and pop up. And now we're going to remove the Christmas trees, which are holding your intake piping in. So all you got to do is take a pair of side cutters and get up underneath them and wiggle around a little bit. And the Christmas trees should come right out. And you can just leave the rubber boots in there, they'll stay. We're going to set those off to the side as well. Now we're going to remove the hose clamps on either end of your intake pipe. So that both ends are loose. And then your mass airflow sensors right here, we're going to go ahead and remove that plug on the back side of that pipe. Now with the top of this intake pipe loose, there is a canister over here on this left side, which is not allowing me to pull it out. So we're going to go ahead and just remove this upper radiator hose so we can get everything out and not have to fight it. Once I get a hold of that hose clamp. I'll go ahead and pull this up here out of the way and see if we can get this intake pipe out. Alright, so now with the intake pipe out of the way, we're going to go ahead and remove the top of the fan shroud, which there are two 10mm bolts on each side. But we're going to take out here. We're going to go ahead and keep a hold of those bolts so we don't lose them. Set them aside on our toolbox. And move to the other side now. Alright, now to go ahead and remove the two 10mm bolts on this side. We need a little bit more of an extension to get the one in the back with the way the shroud is. But we got it now. And now we're going to go ahead and pull that shroud out off the top of the radiator here. And now we'll work on the bottom. Alright, now to get the lower part of this fan shroud out, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to stick in the slot until we can pry up on and pull it out of those bottom clips. There's one on each end and it should pop right out. And it is hooked to hoses, so we're just going to go ahead and slide it back up under that fan so it's out of the way for us to pull that radiator out. And now we're going to move on to the transmission hoses. So for these radiator hoses, we're going to have to go ahead and pull the little plastic cover off. And they have little clips on them that we're going to have to use a screwdriver to pop out of their little holes. And carefully do it so they don't go flying, because you will lose these if they go shooting across your garage or your floor or your driveway. So carefully removing them and setting them aside so you don't lose them. And you'll do the same on the bottom here, which I'll show you in a second. So I did end up having to remove the lower part of the fan shroud to get the camera in here so you could see this. So again, same thing. Take the plastic clip off, put your screwdriver down in there, and carefully try to work that clip out, keeping your finger on it so you don't lose it. And pop it all the way out. keeping your fingers on it. And then just easily pulling out your training lines so that they're backing out of the way. And we're just about ready to remove the radiator. Alright, now to get the last two hoses off, we're going to go ahead and remove your overflow hose. Set it off up into the side. And we're going to take a pair of pliers and get a hold of the lower radiator hose. Twist that clamp off if we can. Maybe having to grab a hold of the hose to get everything to wiggle out of the way. And there you go. Your radiator's ready to be pulled out. And now with everything unhooked, you should be able to just pull it right out of the top. Make sure all your wiring harnesses are clear. And there you go. So before I went ahead to put this new radiator in, I had new adapters that were in the kit when I bought the radiator. So I went ahead and put those on, and they came with all their own clips and everything. So you don't have to reuse the old ones. So just make sure you have the right style in before you go ahead and drop the radiator back in. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the points are down. And I went ahead and already made sure that the bushings were down. So now with all your fittings facing the engine, we're going to go ahead and drop this in carefully, trying not to rub on anything. And set it down in there to where those feet sit in the bushings. And now you're ready to start hooking stuff back up. So now back on the driver's side, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the main hose back on the bottom. I'm just going to start it there. We're going to go ahead and get our pliers on the hose clamp and get it opened up here. Get it popped on. And once you see that it's made it all the way up to the radiator, just go ahead and put your clip back on. Make sure it's good and tight on there. We're going to go ahead and grab our overflow and slide it on. And now we'll go back over to the passenger side. Alright, now to get those transmission lines back on, we're going to go ahead and try to get them straight as we can and get them started back in their holes. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to position the clips in the correct orientation. And with coolant and training fluid all over, makes your fingers very slippery, so be careful not to drop these. But you just got to get them in the right spot to where you can snap them in. And these are under a lot of tension, but if you take your time and do it carefully, it'll snap in. Now this one's going to be in a bad spot too. And you might have to take pliers, or you might have to use a screwdriver to get where you need to on these. It just depends on how it's orientated. So now with those on, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to move the camera so you can try to see what I got to do to get that lower shroud back in here. Because the way I pulled it out, you had to twist it in. You had to start on the driver's side and work it in down around the fan. And it was a pretty tight fit. And you had to work with the fan, and I might even went on this side of the hoses if I can remember right. and just allowed it to rotate up under. And just be careful when you're prying around not to let it get into that radiator so you don't lay the fins over on it, because that'll restrict your airflow. Now I got it up under the hoses. We gotta watch out for that check valve down there. Rotate her around, and we're just gonna set those clips back where they were and snap it into position. And there you go, your lower radiator shroud's back in. Now we'll get the top in. So now taking that upper shroud, we're going to go ahead and pull these lines up and slide it down in here. You might have to move the radiator around just a little bit to get it where you need it. Try to position it down on there and grab the bottom, and it should just pop right up. There's some pins that it sits on. And now we'll grab the 10mm bolts to screw them together. So we're going to start on this passenger side, and we're just going to take our two 10mm bolts. We're going to start them in with our fingers just a little bit. Try to prevent cross threading them. And draw it up till it's tight. Now we'll move on to the driver's side. So now we're going to take the two 10mm bolts from this side, and we're going to reinstall them back in. Again, just making sure that the pin is where it needs to be between the shrouds. And now we'll get back to working on our intake. So now to get this intake back in, we're going to pick up the AC line hoses. Slide this all down through the front again. We're going to try to feed it back into position where it belongs. And slowly sliding them onto the air box and the intake box up there on the engine, making sure that the boot isn't folded up underneath it all, because those are tricky to get on sometimes. And we're going to go ahead and tighten up our hose clamps here. Do the one on the air box. Now we'll plug in the mass airflow sensor. And then I'll go ahead and get the 3 bolts off my toolbox to bolt the front up. We'll go ahead and pull the plastic to where it belongs. Just get all 3 of them started here. Tighten down. Then we'll go ahead and grab the Christmas trees that we'd set aside and pull the intake to where it's in the correct position. And you might have to adjust those little bushings too to make sure they're lined up over the hole. Push those guys in. And then we'll go ahead and put the upper radiator hose on right here, making sure that all your lines and everything else is out of the way for your AC. Sliding that up on there, making sure your clamp gets up on there as far as it needs to. And just making sure the hose is secure. And then the last bit we have to do is put these AC lines back in their clamp up here on the front of the engine. And now all you have to do is look up the specs for how much coolant your vehicle needs and go ahead and fill it up. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments.